This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And this is Creep Street, and boy, howdy, do we have one hell of an episode for you today.
We have a fun, informative, dope-ass episode for you all today.
Oh my God. Today, we are interviewing none other than Greg D'Alessandro, the CEO and editor-in-chief of the iconic Weekly World News.
That's correct.
This interview, before we give you Greg's rap sheet, his credentials here,
right.
Just real quick, of course, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod, and of course, if you want some more goodies, you just go to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast.
That's correct.
But let's talk about Greg D'Alessandro.
This is huge.
This guy is the coolest. First of all, Weekly World News is an iconic part of at least American pop culture, even though it's global.
Right.
It's especially so huge in American pop culture. Literally, what we do would not be here, or at least it wouldn't be the same without Weekly World News.
That's right.
Art Bell, all those guys, like this is all kind of like, in terms of putting these things in print.
I mean, it's the Mac Daddy.
It's the Mac Daddy. Weekly World News has been such an inspiration that we are just so thrilled to have Greg D'Alessandro on our show. We're going to be talking about his work with Weekly World News, his history with Weekly World News, where he's taking it. Mm-hmm. It's incredible stuff. And we talk about his career. What a career. He worked, he's written for stuff for Nickelodeon in the night. He's written tons of music.
Music for TV shows. He wrote on TV shows, like we said, Sesame Street.
Sesame Street.
I mean, talk about iconic.
I think on Nickelodeon he wrote for Pete and Pete, all that. Just incredible.
And then also a screenwriter in his own right that has worked and has optioned many different movies, as well as has a great training background and has taught many people and has written over 5,000 articles for Weekly World News. Unreal.
Right. He helped create some of the most iconic characters that have come out of Weekly World News. What an honor it was to have him on the show. Mm-hmm. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get to this interview with Greg D'Alessandro of Weekly World News. All right, Creep Street, we are joined today by the CEO and editor-in-chief of the Weekly World News, Mr. Greg D'Alessandro. Greg, thank you so much for joining us on Creep Street here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Dylan. Maureen, it's a pleasure to be with you guys.
Yeah, so looking forward to doing this and are so happy to be here with you today.
Oh, yeah. We got a lot to talk about because, you know, between your career and Weekly World News, there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
So before we get into what you're doing now with Weekly World News, where did your career with WWN first start?
Okay, I probably started with Weekly World News about 1999. I'm a writer, was in LA. Writing, I had pitched some stories to National Lampoon, and there was a guy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. You know, always that's doing the LA thing. Screenwriter, you pitch and you pitch and you pitch, and then like see you later. But I was talking to The CEO or the guy who was head of National Lampoon that time, Neil McGuinness, and he had a connection with Weekly World News, and he said, your stuff, your brain works kind of in the way Weekly World News. They need a couple other writers, so I sent some stuff, and they immediately published a few of my stories, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I created a few characters for them, and I just, on the side, I was writing for Weekly World News while I continued my screenwriting, TV writing out there, and other places. And then in 2007, Weekly World News was sold to from American Media in Florida, American Media Inc., which also owned National Enquirer. It was sold to this group in New York called Spycat, and Neil from National Lampoon became the head of it.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Okay. Yeah. So I had written a lot of articles between 1999 and then. And then from then on, I wrote a lot more. So I've totally written over 5,000 articles for Weekly World News since 1999. A lot of them were
amazing.
online. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I was doing it, like I said, on the side for a lot of the time.
Right.
And then, starting like 2010 or something, I was working more and more with them. And then the company kind of went dormant in 2015 for a while. And then we decided, starting in 2019, to start relaunching this. The group there thought that I'd be a good choice for running the creative side of it, so I did it, and we've been rolling since then. Because I'm like very passionate about the brand, and just over my mind about it. So,
well, there's definitely a mystique that the Weekly World News has, especially that pre-digital era.
Yes,
there's something so iconic about the black and white graphics and font. I can remember I was telling Mo, I was a kid, and this would have been in the 90s sometime, but I remember we're checking out at the grocery store, and I see this cover, says something about the world's going to be absorbed by a black hole. And I remember being so scared. I was so scared. And I remember looking around the grocery store thinking, how are the adults? Why is there not chaos?
Right.
And I just remember that disconnect in my head. I just didn't understand. Why is no one freaking out about this?
Yeah, exactly. Because it's right there. It was you picked it up in the supermarket probably, right? And you see it right
exactly,
there.
Right.
I know. It's we had a lot of people that, well, first of all, we're 100% the world's only reliable news. So everything
that's right.
we write is absolutely true. So, maybe the world ended and then we started again. You never, really sure. It's like, it's happened in a split second. And,
we just didn't understand it at the time.
You didn't understand it. So it was the same thing leading up to Y2K. We had a lot of like doomsday articles and everything. And then, and then Y2K was, most people think was like a bust, like nothing happened and everything, but it actually did happen. And there was a lot of things that happened. The world changed. And so it's like that. But yeah, a lot of people had the same reaction when they went in. They see these stories and they're like, wow, this is not being reported by the main media outlets. What is all this? So a lot of people got into it and got into the tone and the voice of Weekly World News. And in the 90s was a big heyday. Early 2002s for Weekly World News, and a lot of people had the similar stories. They would go in and then they couldn't believe what was going on, and then they'd share it with their family and friends, and you never know, all this stuff. Finding the Garden of Eden in Wyoming. There's all this kind of stuff. You didn't know that was happening, right?
Now, before we leave the 90s here, we wanted to touch on a few things because you have, especially for millennial age people, there's a lot of our listeners about our age. We have a soft spot for 90s, especially like Nickelodeon. You've written for a number of these shows we loved when we were young, like Pete and Pete and all that. What was that era of your career like? Because that's something a lot of our listeners are really, really passionate for.
Oh yeah. At the time I was in New York, living in New York, and I was doing a lot of off-Broadway, shows and plays and sketch things. You guys are sketch performers, right? So, and I was
we are.
I was doing stuff like that, and I was doing stand-up comedy a bunch, and a friend of mine who's managing Caroline's at the time, he wound up going to work at Nickelodeon. So he was working on all these shows, and he had different comics come in and punch up some of the jokes and writing on all these shows. So that's what I wound up doing, writing a lot of like come in and do some kid-oriented joke, which kind of matches a lot of Weekly World News sensibility. But it was like Kablam, which I love that show, and Pete and Pete.
I love
Pete.
Oh my
Pete
God,
and
yes.
Pete. I actually got to work on some sketches for all that, and Action League Now was another one, and so
I love Action League.
I don't know if you remember that. That was really.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Always loved the old stop motion. Yeah, love that stuff.
Yeah, that was all fantastic, and I got into the world of kids entertainment, which was cool because I got to see how they did everything. Nickelodeon has this Bible that they give you You have to follow.
Oh,
It's
really?
like kid. I think it's called Kid Approved or something. You gotta follow it. Like every show at the time when they wrote it and then they filmed it and everything, they would run it by a group of 12-year-olds.
Oh, really?
In a group, and they were, you would get notes from all the adults, and they would make it better, And I was just kind of writing jokes and stuff, but they would make it better, and then they bring it to the kids, and the kids were like, I don't like that. They were like so brutal, and then so it had to go through the kids. You have to use the word kid, not children. And there was like all these like rules about Nickelodeon, but they were really successful, and they were really focused in how they were addressing the children and the kids. And a matter of fact, the guys just did a documentary, The Orange Years, a guy named Scott Barber. Did you guys see that?
Oh, no, I haven't seen that
but
yet.
But we've heard about this, yeah.
It's on our list.
Right. Well, he's attached to do a documentary for Weekly World News, which we're going out with. So it's kind of there's some coming together on all that stuff too. So and then I wound up writing in the kids' world again later on. So
absolutely. How would you say did that at all help inform your work at WWN? Was there something about the zaniness or that kind of helped inform your work that you did for Weekly World News?
Yeah, I think so. I think zaniness is a good thing, and a lot of times, like as adults, like we're thinking too much, and in my kind of humor, I'm not the let's say elite kind of humor. I was like, you're thinking too much, you're trying to structure the joke right and everything. Well, kids are just like, oh, that's funny. Just slapping in the head, or something, So it just like it made me realize that there's people that appreciate, let's say, a broader sense of humor that just makes tickles people their funny bone and stuff. And it got me to realize that again, because you're in New York all the time or in LA, and you feel this pressure to be smart and witty, but you could just be funny, trying to be a little humorous.
That is such a good lesson in there, that it's just funny is funny, and if it works, then that's great. And that's, like you said, that's what the good thing and the hard thing about working with kids is that they'll let you know right away if it's funny or not. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, they don't hold back, Right. It's good to look at things from like the child in you point of view, It's like
exactly.
So like and for Weekly World News, let's say very imaginative, so it gets you like just thinking of anything that's possible, and the kids are really good at that too. They're not like so influenced about the world, and they don't care. Yeah,
exactly.
Don't care. Yeah.
Exactly. So, Greg, in 2019, as we know, you became CEO, editor-in-chief. You're in the midst of kind of relaunching, rebranding. What's that journey been like, especially in an era now where things are so hyper-polarized and whatnot? What's that been like, bringing the WWN to a new generation of audiences?
Yeah, well, it's a challenge. It's when I've been like from 2015 to 2019, when it was kind of dormant, I was still out there pitching it all over LA, because people would say, I like this. What else have you worked on? And I would say Weekly World News, and if people knew it, they would light up a little bit.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Yeah, so they would see the potential for TV, film, podcasts, all this kind of thing. There was this enthusiasm out there, and I just thought, okay, we'll just start it up, and then things will just, happen right away. But there's been a lot of work. We've had to grow a lot of things, redo website, and just keep hammering away. First of all, getting people re-familiar with the brand, and then reaching out to a bigger audience. Because my goal eventually is just I'm working on now to bring it to a younger generation, make it better than ever. So I'm trying to build like a younger demographic of people that work here and that will, it appeal to. So, but right now on Facebook, which is like our biggest audience, I think we're 25 to 44, 68% 25 to 44, which is pretty good.
Oh, nice. That's really good.
Yeah, because a lot of people think it's like a lot of older people that have remembered it, but basically that's our core. And if I can get even younger, I can make Weekly World News last forever, So this is my goal.
And we love to hear that too, because as I'm sure it's obvious, we are so into all of this paranormal world and the world of the unexplained, and so we're all about that too, like spreading the wealth and spreading the knowledge of all of that around everywhere. So we love that.
I would say it's safe to say that a lot of shows like Creep Street and things that are similar to Creep Street probably wouldn't be here, or at least wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for Weekly World News.
Absolutely.
I think that goes without saying.
Oh, wow. Well, you guys we're in the same arena here playing, and I said, I listened to a bunch of your podcasts, and they were really great. And you introduced me to a Wendigo, a character I didn't know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I never knew about that. There's all these different creatures in every state in the United States, Canada, around the world, and that was one I didn't know about. I'm like, wow, that's a great one. Didn't know about that. I learned a lot on that one.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
That is such. I mean, so exciting to hear that. That's crazy. I'm so glad though.
No, because I was looking at Creep Street, and you guys are like, we're playing in the same sandbox, So
yeah, it's so cool. I love that.
And it's great having you on. Now, do you have any personal experiences with the unexplained or something that kind of got you into this world, or do you have a part of you that is really seeks out these sorts of things, the paranormal, the unexplained, and whatnot?
That's a really good question. I don't have any personal experience where I went into a building and I saw a ghost. Although in college there was a theater that they talked about the ghost of Washington Hall, and people always heard it. Yeah, and sometimes if you're doing a play, some people would hear the ghost in the background during the play, and so that was that I had that a little experience. But I think it's more of this interest and passion for the unknown and unexplained and things that are out there. I've always been interested in, is this the real world? What else is what am I missing? And maybe this is true. I've never been someone who just dismissed everything. It's like, oh, this sounds like interesting. And I've always been interested in learning about these different mythological creatures out there and outer space. We do a lot of stuff with outer space and what's possible and other worlds and things like that. So I think it's just probably I was born with this interest in other worldly things, and I think that's where it comes from. And this sensibility of the humor from Weekend World News fits perfectly with me.
Yeah, and we kind of feel the same way too, where it the humor really balances out sometimes when you're talking about things that can be super dark or super scary. The humor kind of makes it more palatable, or something.
No,
like
you're
that.
right. You're right. It's not we're not trying to be funny. I mean, we're just trying to tell the truth about something.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we're not winking or nodding at anybody. We're just saying this is the way it is, and then some people find it humorous. So that's
right.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So that's
exactly.
It's a little gentler way, and it's less stressful than if you're like, okay, hi, how you doing? I'm going to tell you 3 jokes right now, and then they're either going to go over or they're not going to go over. It's a little more stressful.
Totally.
That's always been a theory of ours. It's it doesn't matter if you don't believe it, but to firmly state that something doesn't exist, that's as much of a belief as believing it's something.
Right.
Is that no one knows the answers, and so therefore, screw anyone that thinks they know the answers,
Right, exactly. That's it.
So every now and then, these wonderful moments happen where the mainstream media will pick up a story that you guys write, like obviously one of the famous ones with the LAPD buying the jetpacks.
Yeah.
Was it 10,000 jetpacks? And of course, that evening on Fox and Friends or whatever, they were reported. Do you consider that a victory in a way? It's kind of like an unintended plus of...
Yeah, we never know when that'll be happening. That particular story was I think I was writing 3 or 4 a day, and I was 2 in the morning, I hadn't written something, and I was reading. I do a lot of readings, obviously, see what's going on and what's going, future predictions and other things. And there was this company in Australia that was thinking about making these jetpacks, but they were in development. And I said, oh yeah, that sounds really good. I hadn't read too much about it. So then I just, said, well, what if they sold 10,000 of them to somebody, and then LA is going to form this jetpack, force, patrol, so, and then they're going to buy, and then they're going to buy them for 10,000. And I'm like, well, no, they bought them already. So, I guess it was 3:30 in the morning. I had it up, and then I was able to send it out, and then that was it. I just go to bed. I never know if something's going to happen. And then at 7:30 in the morning, I'm getting texts, and my phone was going off, and they were like, it's Fox and Friends, Brian Kilmeade, he read my story, and they put a car on it, and they just, every point I made, they just put a bullet point. It was ridiculous.
No.
Yeah, so they said, LA, it must have been a slow news day, but they put it up, and they just reported it all true, because it was 10,000 jetpacks for $10,000 each, so that's $1 billion.
That's $1 billion.
And the Australian company was getting all these calls about, because I used their real name, and they were getting
right.
And then CNN, I think at 10 in the morning, made fun of Fox for reporting this,
Oh, of course.
True.
Oh, of course.
And then MSNBC did, and then CNN did another special on, and that night Letterman had it in part of his top 10 list.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
That's gotta feel good.
Yeah, that felt good. I was like, holy cow, it's just took off. You never know,
Yeah, you just never know.
And now it proved to be true because I don't know if you see these jetpacks in the last year flying outside of LAX.
Right? Absolutely.
So it was right. It is the world's reliable news.
It is, exactly. That's the thing. We've been, on a number of things, we've been proven correct because we've written a lot about UFOs and aliens and alien abductions, right?
Right.
Since the paper started in 1979, so we had a lot about it. And now, in the last year, the Pentagon's acknowledging that there are UFOs.
Right. They're releasing all of this information, yeah.
And how wild that, for the most part, people are just kind of, I don't even know if the average person, like, they hear about it, but there's not this uproar that you would expect when that sort of information comes out.
Exactly. And now they renamed them to UAPs.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah, they have to rename them now, so just to confuse everybody. But we know what's going on, right? And who knows what else they haven't come out with. So if that's if we're proven right on that, maybe we'll be right on all these other things too. So it'll eventually come out. And some people say that the government's been involved with Weekly World News, trying to push out these stories. Because then if it's in the Weekly World News, it's discredited and everyone just dismisses it. But actually, it's true.
Yes, that is fascinating. I love that idea of the government infiltrating or government cover-up with like disinformation agents and things like that. And it's so cool to see that connected with WWN. I didn't know that. That's so cool.
That's actually a great question. Do you ever have any UFO enthusiasts, or do you ever get accused of being a disinformation agent or some deep state actor or something like that?
Sometimes we do get accused of both ways of being, doing some stuff. No, I don't think we've ever been accused too much of working for the government or with the government, but they, dismiss some of the, things that we report on, or that's just, I guess, par for the course when you have investigative reporters out there recording on things.
Now, Mo and I were talking, we've actually both seen a production of Batboy.
Yes.
I actually saw it in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which just shows you how much these characters have permeated pop culture. It wasn't even like I was in New York or something. I saw it in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And what do you think there is about characters like Batboy that, for whatever reason, just kind of catch fire like that?
Yeah, I think, Batboy, of course, is our big iconic character. And I think that really struck a chord. It came out in 1992 was when he was introduced. And all these characters, even the first one that really took off, actually, was in the 80s, was Elvis was alive.
Oh, yes.
Right? And it's funny you said Kalamazoo, because there were a couple people in Kalamazoo that said they saw Elvis. So then we took it out. Yeah. So then we took that out, and Elvis is alive. And so we had multiple stories on Elvis sightings, Elvis being alive, and then eventually Elvis died, but then he didn't die, But going back to your question, these characters, I think there's something about, they're like underdogs in a way. They're underdogs, anti-heroes. Like Batboy always has the government, is always trying to chase him down, trying to capture him and control him. And, he's just trying to live his life as who he is and be himself out there. And I think that kind of strikes a chord with people like Manigator, too. This is like half alligator, half man. And, and he's like, there are people that are characters that are misunderstood, not believed, but have they all most of them seem to have like a good heart, except there's a couple that are a little more violent, but they have, a good heart that connects. And I think it's the images, the Batboy really connected with the open mouth. Like what some people say it's like,
you have it right there. Yes.
Yeah. Like some people say it's like a what the F kind of attitude, or what's going on, or what, this is crazy. So I think that image really captured people, like, what's going on. And same thing with a lot of them, PhD ape. We have this, the smartest being on the planet is this ape, and he's got very smart intelligence. And I think people like to feel like there's these characters out there that are maybe represent our true nature, or maybe better parts of our nature.
Right.
And that's something I've kind of noticed just from doing this show is, say, belief in ghosts or whatnot. There's obviously that, people have a belief, they actually, whether it was from an experience or whatnot, they have a belief. But then at the same time, part of it's almost like, well, screw you. And that's something we've always said on Creep Street is, as long as what you believe in doesn't hurt anyone around you, like, believe in what you want and screw anyone that says you can't believe in what you want.
Right.
It's a rebellion in a way.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's a questioning of the world. Is the world really the way we see it? and everything. I was reading this philosopher, like a physicist, philosopher named David Deutsch out of, I guess he lives in England. His book has some Beyond Infinity or something, but he's talking about what is true and what is not true. But he's also talking about like this desk. I know this desk is here, but is it really here? Like what, you know what I mean? Like what do you really know? And this is like a major physicist. Is it really here? What does that mean that this desk is here? So there's a lot of questioning that like we just accept like the world is just the way it is, and there's all sorts of things going on that we don't know about in the world.
Absolutely.
And we only see it from our own perspective all the time, right? But we don't know how other people are seeing the world, and I can't say what's true or not for other people, because like if we looked at the same event or the same thing, the three of us would probably see it differently. We'd write a difference, right? So I don't know, there's all sorts of things, and I've personally heard so many stories of ghosts that just some of them are just not explainable.
Right. It's like even if most of the stories are completely fabricated and just were lies, it's like there still are some stories out there that can't be explained, that aren't real. So it's like, what about those stories? What does that mean?
Exactly.
And, if you go back 200 years ago or something like that, we didn't even know that gorillas were real or something like that. Or, people of the Western world, things like that. So it's like, who knows what else we could find out in 100 years and 200 years. And whatever.
Yeah, Maureen, that's a great point, because a lot of people, when they were living 200 years ago, they might not have left within maybe 300 years ago, 20 miles of where they were born,
Right.
They probably don't. So how would they know that there was even different? Yeah, they wouldn't even know if you told them that there was, giraffes when they're living in Europe. What would they be like? But that's just crazy,
Right,
crazy.
that sounds insane.
Somebody came back and said, "Oh, I saw a giraffe. It would look like this." They'd be like, "Yeah, right."
Sure you did. Whatever. Yeah.
And we say that a lot too. Our theory is like, are there frauds out there? Sure, there's plenty of frauds, but it doesn't mean everyone's a fraud. Like, I think there are genuine cases of paranormal hauntings, and of course, there's people who are faking it too. Like this assumption that it's got to be either or, I think is kind of indicative of just a larger problem we have as a whole. Everything is either or.
Right.
There's no nuance whatsoever.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and going back to the beginning, like, cavemen, they wouldn't know anything that was out there, right? I mean, how would they know? We're just, everyone just wants to see things that this is the way it is, or like you said, either or the other way. And there's a lot of that we don't know. There's a lot that we don't. There's things that we know, things that we don't know, and things that we don't know, And
yes.
Now you've got a lot planned for this rebranding. I know you've got a podcast launching soon. There's, like you said, a documentary in the works, even a couple of other film projects. What can you tell us about? I know probably you can't tell us everything, but what can you tell us about what you've got cooking for us in the future?
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, on one hand, we have the online and the website, and we want to go back into press. That's like one lane. On the other lane is, TV, film, podcast. We want to get Wicked World News out to more people, get the exposure, and that would be the quickest way to do it, obviously. So that's why we've been pitching a lot of shows and everything. We had a deal back in 2012 with a fan of Wicked World News for a long time, was Steven Spielberg and Amblin Entertainment. So he had the rights to Wicked World News for a while to do a sitcom, which he had maybe 7 different writers, and they wrote this half-hour sitcom. And we were like, well, that'll be it. We were represented by a CAA at the time, and they were like, I'd be pitching these other movie ideas based on like Lake Erie Monster or Hogzilla or something, and they were like, CAA would say, no, you got to wait for Steven's thing to go, and then we'll build off of that, So then we wound up in a movie called Waiting for Steven, like it never, that was our movie, Waiting for Steven. So that never happened. So we were like locked into that, and we had a couple other companies we got locked into. So then we're like, you know what? We just got to go out, and people look at Weekly World News like this one kind of show. But there was a show in 1996 called Weekly World News on USA Network.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like 8 episodes, sort of like The Daily Show or something like that.
Oh, cool.
But so we look at it more now as like a mini Marvel. We have 300 characters, and we have 110,000, 115,000 stories, and a lot of them could be the basis for a a lot of different shows, TV. So we're out there pitching. I have a show right now I developed with a guy named Adam Rifkin. He did a movie called Detroit Rock City, the last movie.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So we developed this show. It's really good. We're getting some good response on that. We're talking to 2 studios about one involving Batboy and then another one involving another idea. But both of those are in the legal phase where they're hashing that out. And then we have the documentary, of course, that's moving forward. And we have a really good team on that. So we have all that going on in Hollywood, but now I've learned after doing this for years, like this might take a while, or this might work, or that might not work, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's Hollywood after all. You know. You're like, oh yay, we're doing what happened? So I'm kind of hedging. So we formed this Weekly World News Studios where we're just gonna do our own independent movies and produce them and put them out there, so that we can control.
That is exciting.
That's what we're doing right, and we're doing our first one is called Zombie Wedding, and we got everything set up. We're just raising the final half of the money, and then we're good to go. And we have like 3 or 4 lined up after it. So.
Oh wow, that is so exciting.
You guys have expanded so much. You opened Weekly World News Studios in California. Does Weekly World News have a headquarters? Would you say, or is it kind of nebulous? Is it wherever you are, sort of?
Yeah, right. We kind of opened a little office in Manhattan. So we had there, and then the pandemic hit, and I go back and forth between LA and here. So my partner David Collins, he's in Manhattan, and then I was in LA going back and forth. But since the pandemic, like everyone else, we've been now we've been like, it's almost easier just to write separately. Although I'd like to get the writers in one room because that's the way they started it, just like throwing ideas to each other, and it's better that way. We still have our meetings and Zooms, but I like to get in the same room. So we'll still have this Manhattan office, but we're going to open an office in LA. So that's what we're looking at, right? Right now we're just working out of my place in LA too. So
absolutely, yeah. It's the advent of Zoom has been so amazing, but there is just something so special about all actually being together in the same room when it comes to collaborating. So I completely understand that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even this, I would be better if I was sitting across from you guys. I would feel better. It would be fun.
I know we'll have to make that happen.
That would be great. I love Chicago. I should have met. I was just in Chicago a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Just for a couple of days, and I'll have to come by and swim. I love Chicago. Chicago's great.
Yeah, and we love New York and LA as well, so we're on board.
Good. Well, Chicago, LA, New York, there's all the same kind of network of connections,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
well, they're there.
Yeah, yes.
Now, Greg, you also had an extensive music career in terms of writing things for television and whatnot. Tell us a little about that, because you've had your hand in many pots.
Yeah, I think when I was from a kid growing up, I just liked writing, and I would. Yeah. But I was also played music. I played drums for a long time, but I always was drawn to I don't want to play that song. I want to do my own song, Right. I was like, they're like, play that. I'm like, nah, I don't know. I'll just come out, even if it was just a drum thing, So I was drawn to that, and then in college I started writing plays, and when I was a senior, they did a main stage production of my play. So I always thought that was great. But then after I graduated, I went into music because I started playing with different groups. I was like a sideman, and I played with some jazz bands and other things like that, and had a couple of other bands where I would write songs and stuff. And so I pursued that a lot. And I had this jazz record label where it's called Amasea Records. I think we'd released 35 records at a time when jazz was becoming less and less like a smaller and smaller percentage of the market. It's like, right. But we had a lot of great people on it, and we recorded a bunch. So I like doing that. But I kept writing. I love writing songs too. So I've gotten some songs on shows like Pretty Little Liars, and I wrote. Nice. I had a show in China I worked on. I did all sorts of music. I did 75 episodes of this kid show in China. So I wrote all sorts of music for that and some other animated things. And for Weekly World News, we're working on a couple things. And this Zombie Wedding has a lot of music in it. It's kind of like it's a wedding. So, but we have all original music.
Right.
People describe it as sort of like Shaun and the Dead meets Rocky Horror.
Oh my God, what a combination! I mean, like 2 of the best movies ever.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, I know. We're setting the bar high. That's what we want to do.
No, but in a good way. Yeah. In a good way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, because this would be fun, not really overly gory or anything, and just campy, fun, singing original songs.
Greg, I think it's obvious. Like Weekly World News sort of paved the way for other similar publications like The Onion or Reductress, you name it. Because I would argue, though, that Weekly World News still has such an iconic look and presence. What makes WWN sort of stand out against the rest?
Yeah, that's a good question, too. And by the way, the Onion, the four guys from Wisconsin that started, they took a road trip to Lantana, Florida, where Weekly World News was, and they checked it out. Yeah, and then they went back, and I think their first issue looked a lot like Weekly World News. And then they took it in their own wonderful direction, and they had great success. I don't know. I think it started in 1979 as a part of American Media Group, which is part of National Enquirer, which National Enquirer was started in 1952, and then it went to a color press in 1979, and they had these black and white presses sitting there. And they're like, hey, let's not throw them out, let's do something with them. They had this idea they had all these bizarre but true stories that they didn't put in the National Enquirer. So
gotcha,
let's put them in here. And then it started that way, and it took off right away. I think it sold 150,000 the first issue. October 16th, 1979. And then
oh my gosh,
we're almost at the anniversary. And I don't know, I think it's not something that appeals to like the coast, let's say. It's not like this elitist thing. It appeals to like the average American person. Right. And I think people like the black and white. It's not overly slick. Matter of fact, we're like anti-slick, where you can see a lot of the we don't have like a ultra high standards for Photoshop or any of that. Right. It just kind of like gets the idea across. And there was a lot of parts to it. We had advice columns and opinion columns and stuff like that. We did do horoscopes, and there's a big crossword puzzle in it for a while. So it had a lot of stuff like that. But it did have this, we don't use this word because it's the F word, but fake news,
Yes.
Right, yes. That's the F word, because we're 100%, the world's most reliable news, of course. So, but some people, look back on us as like maybe the father of that kind of, or grandfather of that kind of news, which now, today, that has meant to deceive. Like if people say fake news, that means like I'm going to deceive, I'm trying to like manipulate you. It's got an ugly thing to it, but we were always like to entertain and then inform a little bit. And I think people like long for that kind of, the way that it used to be. Like that was like playful, fun, like what if they like that, but they don't like the, now you can't trust it and it's like deceive them. We don't want any part of that. So I think people like that, and the imagination part of it. There's a lot of imagination, like The Onion and those, the Reductress, Hard Times. There's one in Dublin called Waterford Whisper News. They don't have any characters really. We have a lot of characters and things that can be developed. That's where we have this advantage of an IP, because we've created a lot of characters. So I think The Onion has, they do have one character, or a couple. I'm trying to remember what it was. And then Florida Man came out of somewhere. But we have these, characters. And Alien, we have our own Alien P-Lod. And I think people are attracted to that. There's like ongoing narratives. Like there's been 480 stories we've done about Batboy so far.
Wow.
275 about Manigator or PhD Ape. Lake Erie Monster is a big one.
Yes.
Maybe there's a Lake Michigan Monster. I don't know if you guys
I was going to say that we'll have to check that out, see if we can find the Lake Michigan Monster.
What's been some of your proudest personal achievements with Weekly World News, whether it was a specific stories or a character, or maybe it was something behind the scenes, but what's been some of your personal proudest moments?
One of the first ones I wrote when it went online, I wrote a thing about Larry King, and that the aliens were talking to him about retiring and all this stuff, and they were just moved to online, and they weren't sure how it was going to go, and I think it was the first thing I wrote, and it was boom, it made the New York Times. Like they quoted it in the New York Times.
Way.
They put a quick. So I was like, wow, I just did that, and so I was like, I felt good about that, and just creating these characters. Like even we have a new one now, Little Monkey Man, that people are gravitating to. So creating characters or developing the narrative. I like following up on the narratives of all the things. So there's a lot of satisfaction in just doing the work, just writing the stories and playing with these characters. But as a business, I think, I have this partner, David Collins, that he does a lot of the business side, but I've known him for a long time. But, it's just me and him just being overly passionate about it to get it to, because it could have been dormant from 2015 and just gone away. But I'm like, Joseph Campbell used to say, I'm like a man whose hair is on fire seeks a pond. Like I'm just like, I'm like rabid, I'm like a honey badger. I won't won't, like, I will not stop talking about it. Like, I will not stop. I was like, we got to do this. We got to get it going. That's the way I am about it. I want to make it happen. I want to turn it over to the new generation, let them run with it. I just want to get back up, running fully, and then turn it over and let people run with it for the next 40 years. Because there is, the more people I talk to, there are a lot of people who have really fond memories of it, and they were touched by, sharing it with their families, the stories and the characters. And I think it's just like a good piece of Americana, and the Batboy is this iconic character, and it gets people thinking. We've had this story about is the Earth flat? There's a flat Earth society, right? Or is it round? Right. But we say it's both.
Right, I love that.
Right? You know what I mean? So it's like it flats and then it bubbles up into the sphere and then it collapses sometimes. So why can't it be both? And maybe in 200 years they'll prove that to be true.
Exactly, right? Because 200 years ago we thought a lot of things weren't true, and here we are.
Exactly.
Great. What would you say? Is there something you would say to maybe new fans or even old fans alike about this new era of Weekly World News we're about to see?
Yeah, I would just say, first of all, spread the word, because we're back. Go to our Facebook, Weekly World News, and we have a good community there sharing a lot of things, and we're growing, just getting the Instagram going a little bit, Weekly World News Official, and the website, weeklyworldnews.com. And I think just spread the word about what it was and what we want it to be, what it is now, and get involved. I mean, we wanted this to be a community where we're growing, obviously. We're still raising money, but we want to get more people involved and eventually overtake CNN, Fox, all them.
Yes.
I mean, does it sounds crazy? But it's possible, right? It is possible.
Why not? I love that. And
I'd love to. You guys are sketch people. I would love to do SNL on one channel, Weekly World News on the other, right?
We would.
Can we do that? There's got to be some other alternative, because we can have like the news or like the news.
Right.
Well, I would say there's an obvious appetite for it, because so many just individuals on YouTube now get more viewership than like many cable news shows get now combined. It just shows you people are so hungry for something that isn't force-fed to them and isn't so, I don't know, detached. I don't even know the right, but yeah, people are hungry for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot, and the world's changing so much. We're looking at, people aren't really looking at websites as much, or they're living on the phone. So it's more more like YouTube. So we need an army to work on, YouTube. You got to keep feeding that beast, just like everything else. And TikTok, we're just like looking into that. I mean, that alone could be bigger than any TV show we do, right? That could be. So we gotta get that figured out. We have someone that actually, I don't know if you've seen her. She's done videos for us. Her name's Cordelia Bunk. Yeah, her real name's Maya Nell, and she works with the Groundlings in LA. And she's done about 10 or 12 videos for her. Very, very popular for us. But on TikTok, she does all these other things that are really popular. But like, she's a good example of like where we want to go. She's done some great interviews of trees, of an empty zoo.
Oh, cool!
That's so fun.
She interviewed some technology, a refrigerator and stuff like that. So she's been, people really love her. So I think, that there's just so much that can be had and fun we can have, without, we're not like a big, like I said, East Coast, Western corporate. We're just kind of like salt of the earth, like regular people trying to go out and grow this thing.
Absolutely. Well, Greg, thank you so much for joining us today. Like I said, Creep Street certainly would not be the same without Weekly World News. And I think almost everyone from Art Bell on up would probably agree that Weekly World News really has influenced so much of this sort of niche of entertainment that we do. So thank you for taking the time to come on Creep Street. And we are so excited for the future of Weekly World News.
Well, thank you, Dylan and Maureen, so much. I mean, I'm a fan of Creep Street, because I listened to a lot of you today, because we're both in the same, like I said, the same arena, and you guys are fantastic as hosts and artists yourself. So it's a real pleasure and honor having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
That means so much. We really appreciate it. What an honor to be able to interview him. I mean, what a blast.
What a great guy. That was so much fun. Of course, citizens of the Milky Way, please check out the Weekly World News.
Yes.
Online, check out their social media. We follow them on Instagram. Lots of fun stuff. Truly an institution.
Fully, yes. So thank you so much for joining us on that fantastic interview. We really had a blast. If you have any questions or comments or anything, please feel free to reach out to us on social media or email us directly at creepstreetpodcast@gmail.com, because we will definitely have Greg on again in the future. So if you have any of those questions or anything like that, just let us know and we'll ask him next time.
And did you think you were going to get away with it? No way. Ladies and gentlemen, the names of our top tier Patreon subscribers.
Thank God.
Of course, the Dream James Watkins, the Finnish Face Via Lundqvist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the Oh-So-Suave Sean Richardson, the British Bonebreaker Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, and the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey.
Dylan, thank you so much for reading those righteous names. And if you would also like to be privy to bonus Creep Street content, please check out patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. Another way to help support the show is just to like, rate, subscribe, spread the good word. We really, really appreciate it, and it means a lot.
That's right. And remember, Creep Street is coming to C2E2 in December.
Woohoo! We
Go
can't
online,
wait.
check out, get tickets for that. All right. Well, citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.
Goodbye.